What are your options for dealing now with the Taliban at a political level?
Well, thank you, Ahmad. It's such a pleasure to be part of this important and timely conversation here. I have to also thank the organizers. And the family of Asma Jahangir for this timely conversation. To be very honest, talking about Afghanistan is full of emotion for us. Specifically the realities that the ordinary people are facing at the moment. I'm coming from a privileged society at the moment to represent Afghanistan. I really wish we had more voices from Afghanistan to come here today to talk about their sorrows, about their pains. When we are talking about the past, personally, it ended up with the two patterns, blame games and, to be very honest, frustration and angers, which is not a strategy at all. And instead, we have to be focusing more what's going on now and how we're going to be building on what has happened and what are the lessons to be learned. For the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, we know the figures, we know the fact. There is no option to oppose with the Taliban at the cost of the life of Afghan peoples. However, I do see two problems when it comes to this discourse, as Samina has touched upon that. Firstly, the Taliban, as the current de facto authority in Afghanistan, is still trying to take the people of Afghanistan as a hostage and use them as a leverage against the international community for receiving donations. While this is contrary and against to the very common understanding of the social contract and governance in any modern society in the world. And the second problem, I think, with this conversation is the technicality of distribution of these humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. To be very honest, Ahmad, I have been in the government of Afghanistan. I'm so worried about replacement of Afghan institutions by the international community. I hate to bring this wording that there is some sort of poverty porn running by the greedy institutions at the moment in Afghanistan, to be very honest, including the UN, to exploit the current situation, the dire situation of Afghans, and in order to widen and inflate their own institutions within the society. While a story teaches us that none of the international institutions will be able to replace. That has been one of the key strategic failures in the past 20 years when we have replaced our model of development in Afghanistan by NGO model instead of investing on an institution in Afghanistan. Having said this, whether the Taliban is a right partner to distribute this, to be very honest, as an Afghan looking at things from out of Afghanistan, while I left after 15 days after Taliban took over Kabul, I see a weak management among the Taliban yet when it comes to showing delivery services to the people. And this is where I think it worries me so much, and I think it's a legitimate concern by all the international community. The way forward will be challenging for all of us. I'm sure there is a lot of questions in front of all of us, but mostly in front of the Taliban. The first question is the illusion of the military victory. I'm coming from a family that has been part of the Afghan politics in the past 30 years, and one of my key members of family has been representing what's very famous here, Northern Alliance here. In 2002, most of us has been overwhelmed so easily by a rapid military victory, while we failed to present a political strategy for the governance in Afghanistan, and the same pattern is repeating itself with the Taliban. I remember the days that most of us on that time, while I was a kid, and the family members were talking with each other how to reward their own fighters instead of looking to the people where they were there. And to be very honest, we also failed to coordinate our efforts with the international community to make sure to identify the resilient forces within the society, to not marginalizing them further from the process, specifically from the bond process, which we all know about it. I do see these stories is repeating in my life, in almost 30 years of my life, and the irony of this is that nobody is learning from these pasts, including our partners and neighbors in the region. And I think this is where we have to really focus on that. My final point will be the transition of the Taliban from an insurgency to the government. I think at the moment, Taliban is trying to consolidating their position and come up with a consolidated political strategy to engage with the international community. While the discourse itself, in my opinion, has a problem. The Taliban and their allies are yelling on the international community to come up with a roadmap to unfreeze the international assets or to recognize the Taliban, while we are all missing one point, that the Taliban, as de facto rulings in Afghanistan, as the de facto authorities, they have the responsibility to come up with a new political, social contract in Afghanistan that could be acceptable for the majority of the people of Afghanistan. And I do see a new transactional relationship is building between the Taliban and international community based on so-called city and humanitarian assistance, while it might help a dead body with a very strong injection, but I don't think that would be a long-term solution for Afghanistan. In order to understand the Taliban, I think three elements are important. Firstly, violence itself historically has been a unifying factor when it comes to, especially against the foreign forces. While the power has been divisive even between brothers when they come to the power in Afghanistan. This is a very historic fact that we know about it in Afghanistan. The second element is about lack of a strong spiritual leadership among the Taliban, especially after the death of Mullah Omar. We really don't know who is the current leader of the Taliban, while there is a competition over leadership or over leading the government institutions in Kabul, specifically between different factions of the Taliban. I think this is also important that it will be reinforced and refueled by the course of time, especially that Afghan government and structure is not that much big and that much accommodative in order to give the opportunity for every fighter to be rewarded a position within the Afghan government. Even if that's going to be the case, there would be an extra added problems into different layers of problem to the current problem that the Taliban are facing with the lack of capacity. Lastly, I think it's important to understand that egos are very strong among Afghans. I have seen it myself. I have been myself in the government. And historically, there hasn't been social education in Afghanistan and political culture to control and manage the ego when it comes to the politics in Afghanistan. And I'm sure the Taliban will be suffering the same problem as we have been suffering in the past 20 years in Kabul. Thank you.